Hi guys, my name is Sachin Mishram and welcome back to the sixth part of our basics of Adobe XD. And if you are new to my channel, please subscribe and like and please share. If you have ever done any work for multiple screens, let's say you are showing a web design for mobile, tablet and desktop, and not only these three surfaces but the portrait and landscape orientation, and you want to indicate the same content to a client on all of these devices. It can be pretty tedious to try to resize all that content across all of these different layouts. Responsive resize uses built-in XD technology to guess at the layout structure, and as you resize it, try to intelligently do so based on the width of the screen that you are designing for. So this is one of those things that's best to show and then describe after. What I want to do is come in and duplicate the content for tablet. I'm going to come and select this mobile artboard here and press and drag a second copy. And with that still selected, I'm going to come here in the properties inspector and change the width to 768 and hit enter. I will come in also and give it a friendly name. So I will say tablet. Now what I want to do is start to resize this content across the span of the artboard. To do that, I will come on and just select some of this header content here, not everything. And I'm going to press and drag to resize it. So consistent with the behavior that you have seen for smart guides in XD. Responsive resize uses guides that let you know as you are looking at the layout what's happening. And for the most part, really good things are happening. Things are remaining centered that we are originally centered in the initial design. Objects that were on the left and right are mostly remaining on the left and right. I'm going to go ahead and drag all the way to that edge. And then let's drill down a little bit. I'm going to zoom in and look at some of the details. So what happened is, as I mentioned, XD guessed about the behavior that I would want when I resize this content. And one of the guesses is any content that's about 15% from the edge of the selected set is going to remain by default on the edge. Content that's centered all remain centered, and these objects remain on the edge. Notice this little back arrow. It's kind of crypto. This is using something known as percentage based layout rather than absolute or pin layout. So it moved. If I double the width of my design, it sort of doubled the space between the carrier and this little back arrow icon. I have the ability to come through and change that behavior so that it does the right thing. For that, I'm going to hit undo. So Command G or Control Z on Windows. And I'm going to tunnel in to select that back arrow icon. Here in the properties inspecting the layout section, notice that there is a responsive resize area. I have automatic resize and manual. If I click over to manual, we're kind of taking your top of the magic and seeing that what logic lies underneath the responsive resize behavior, and basically allowing yourself to override that default behavior. So because I know I want that back arrow icon to stay pinned to the left side, what I'm going to do is keep it as fixed in width and height because it's a logo, but I don't want it to scale. I do want it to be pinned to the top of the screen, but I also want it to pin to the left side. So it will stay when everything else moves. And as I continue to look at all of the content, when I'm interacting with it, I can have these controls. So let's go ahead and continue now. I will go ahead and select that big set of content and I'm going to press and drag and just check out the behavior. So as I go from the top, my little back arrow icon is behaving. My hero content is staying centered and the text is falling too wide in the width. That's good for the headline, but notice my little tiles down here. I've got a couple of things going on. I don't want it necessarily to span the width. So once again I go back to my original layout and make changes here. So if I come to this text groups I will tell you a trick for that. Although these are within different groups. So if I look at the layers panel, I've got these little tiles and these text blocks are sort of nested inside of all those tiles. When you want to direct select content within groups, holding Shift and Command on the Mac or Control on Windows and clicking on these objects is going to tunnel through any groups you might have defined. You can use that across our boards too, which is pretty handy. But with those 3 different blocks of text selected, I am going to go now to the manual mode for responsive resize and change this. What I like to do is not to be pinned to the left hand side. I want it to be fixed in width and height, which is going to keep it from spreading out as a text block. So let's try this one more time. I'm going to go ahead and press and drag to select a good set here. And as I do so, notice that I'm getting better behavior. So my text is working the way I would like to. Looks like it's got a couple of things going on. I'm going to not worry about the fact that container is a little offset, but I'm just going to select it and go into my options and make sure that it is also pinned. So that just kind of scratching the surface on this feature. As we go forward and look at combining all of the content to where layout capabilities in things like components, we'll spend more time on that feature. But just one of those things that give it a try. Let XD try to do it with the right way. If you go back to the source version and make changes, it will affect how the responsive resize behavior works. Repeat grid is one of those wow features in Adobe XD that makes simulating data or data-driven sites incredibly easy. It is definitely one of those features that's easier to see in action than to describe. So let me just jump in and show you around. I have a tile here, and let's assume for a moment I want to have multiple tiles. So I want to show multiple products in a product catalog, let's say. Have gone in and selected all the objects. We can see them here in the layers panel, and because we are going to try to use some of the features I've shown you earlier on this course, let's go ahead and group these objects. So I'm going to group them into an individual tile, and I might come in and give it a name. We'll call it tile products, and I will hit enter. Let's go ahead and for good measure apply some padding since got a nice background fill. So I've gone in and set those padding attributes, and chances are by default they are going to be fine. The next thing I want to do is repeat this tile and change out the different details about it for this product catalog. So with it selected here in the properties inspector in the upper left hand corner, I'm going to click on repeat grid. What happens is the selection color changes. Notice I have got this dotted green line now, and I have a handle on the right and I have another on the bottom. What I can do is press and drag and start to repeat this element out. So I will go in and do that a few times. After I have done so and hover over, I can see different spacing between these objects. So I'm allowed to come in and control how much space I would like to have across the set that I have defined. The next thing I want to do is come in and actually introduce dynamic data, new data that I may have pulled out of a database for the purpose of prototyping in here. And what I have to do is switch over to the images folder for this course. So let me go and do that. And then I have got the images and text folder. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that, and I'm going to view this by thumbnail. So it's a little easier to see. What I have are a number of images, and there are different photos of different types. I also have 2 text files. Let's take a quick look at those. If I click on title and preview it, what you can see is it's a text file, and it has the title for each of the tiles that I want to design. And I have just hit enter. It's a hard enter or a new line for each title to separate them. And then the last one is a bit longer. It's these descriptions that I have set, and each description just I have hard enter to indicate when the next description should come up. So with that said, what I can do is come in and just drag this content into my repeat grid. I will start with the images first. Now if I have a less images that I have tiles, XD is going to go and repeat them one after the another. I will go ahead and pick, let's go for 6 different images that we are not using so far. Those look awfully similar, so let's try go with this one. So I have got the 6 images. I'm going to come now and press and drag those images. See how I get an indicator that there are 6 images in the stack. I'm going to drag until I see the image area highlighted in the repeat grid. And when I release, XD goes through and replaces each with a unique image. Let's do that as well as with the text. So come on in, we'll go with the title. I'm going to grab the text file, press and drag it here on the XD design canvas and hover until I get right on the title field and release. Notice that it changed all of the titles. It respected any of the styling, any of the design attributes I defined for that field. We'll do it one more time. Let's do it for the description. So it's definitely a very special purpose feature. It allows you to quickly come in and just make those changes. Now if I come back to the design here and decide that I want to move things around, let's say I don't like the look of the title, I think it needs to move down a little bit. I can press and drag to drag that down and notice that it's going to apply the changes to all of the elements within this repeat grid. So maybe just, I don't know, make it a little taller. When I'm done doing this, I may not want this to be in a grid just like it is now. I may want to randomize the design. So I can always click out of the repeat grid collection, select it at the root level, and back here in the properties inspector, I can ungroup my grid. When I do that, it's not going to undo the work that I did. It actually expands a little bit there to show me some of those on the edge. Let's go ahead and undo that. I will show you why that happens. So see how I have a little bit of padding here and here on this side and this side. If I tighten up my stack here just a little bit on both sides and go ahead and ungroup, it won't expand for me. Now I have different tiles that I'm free to arrange as I see fit based on the design that I'm working on. This can be really handy when you're doing some other kind of repetitive tasks that can be tedious. So having it as a component that I can use throughout my design just to repeat in this way is really kind of fun. Another way I've seen it used a lot is, let's say you want to do a dashed line but it's really made of dots and you want to do a dotted lines, it's an easy way to repeat that content. With this, we have come to the end of our video. For more tips and tricks just like this, please let me know in the comment section below. If you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. Thank you for watching my video. I will see you all soon.